I'm Chris McDonough, a retired homicide detective. I've interviewed thousands of people, from serial killers to ministers. Welcome to the interview room. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the interview room for the special edition on jury tampering. Is Alex Murdaugh going to get another trial? If you guys haven't heard, this week, Alex's defense team set off another major explosion. His attorney filed a motion for a new trial charging jury tampering by the clerk of the court, who's named as Becky Hill or Rebecca Hill, or Miss Becky, as folks call her there in your local courthouse. Karen, what did you find out so far? Because we've got, not only do we have the 65-page affidavit, we have an exclusive where we have a opinion from the South Carolina State Ethics Commission written by Becky, requesting them to respond on May 2nd, 2023. And we're going to read this word for word here in a couple of minutes. But Karen, what do we have so far on this story?
Well, Alex Murdaugh's attorneys, as you well know, I'm sure everybody's heard by now, they had a press conference yesterday and they went over a long list of allegations against the clerk of the court, jury tampering being the most serious of it. And they filed the 65-page motion, and they're asking for a new trial for Alex Murdaugh. Now, let's remember, Alex was convicted back in March of killing his wife, Maggie, and their son, Paul. And right now, currently, he is serving 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole in prison in South Carolina. So this certainly was a bombshell that was dropped by his attorneys.
And we have to ask ourselves, right, Karen? I mean, we have, like everybody else, been following every minute of this particular trial. And, now all of a sudden, Alex raises his head through his attorneys, claiming that this clerk tampered with the jury. Am I right?
Yes. And these are allegations. These are very strong allegations. But when you listen to the defense attorneys, they say that 2 jurors signed an affidavit about this, and 2 other jurors signed, sort of an affidavit. I mean, so they talked to 4 out of the 12 jurors total, and they claim that these jurors were telling the same story independent of each other. And so we're going to get into these allegations and take a look at what they are.
Yeah, another curveball, right? I mean, so let's look at those allegations. Becky Hill is allegedly instructed jurors not to be misled by evidence presented in Murdaugh's defense. Okay, these are the highlights, right? Another point is she allegedly told jurors not to be fooled by Murdaugh's testimony in his own defense. So while he's on the stand, she's supposed to be behind the scenes telling people, hey, don't be fooled by that. She tells juror number 785 that everything Murdaugh has said has been lies and that I should forget about the guns. They will never be seen again. I have no idea where that one comes from. But, whoever juror number 785 is, she's going to be questioned. That's for sure coming up. She told them that this shouldn't take us long and to reach a verdict. You got a little more color behind that one. What's the story behind that story?
Well, there's a lot. There's a lot of allegations, and I think the biggest one that the defense made such a strong point about was that Ms. Hill had allegedly had private conversations with jurors about the case. Now, we should say right here that a clerk of the court, that is not their job. Their job is absolutely not to discuss the case, anything about it with the jurors. They're really in a support role to be there for the jurors for things like water and food and maybe getting a message to the judge or a bailiff. But this is completely out of what any clerk should ever be saying. And that's the point that the defense is saying. But again, these are allegations and there's more of them. So do you want to keep going on that, Chris?
Sure. And of course, all parties are innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. But the defense is also saying that she made a comment that if they deliberate past 11, they would be taken directly to a hotel, even though none of them were preparing to spend the night. That's an interesting one. 6 of the jurors allegedly were smokers. And once they went to deliberate, she allegedly told them no smoking breaks until a verdict is reached. So, these are big allegations that, Harpootlian and Jim Griffin are pulling up here. And it was after her book. So she writes a book. Her new book is called Behind the Doors of Justice, The Murdaugh Trials, and it came out August 1st that the defense started looking into this, and this is what kicked it off. But we have exclusive information because we did a little of our own homework here, and I'm going to add this to the screen here, but I'm going to read this letter, and so kind of, Karen, kind of set the stage for what this letter is.
Yeah, absolutely. So Becky Hill co-authored the book with a guy named Neil Gordon. Neil Gordon has been giving interviews, and he says that when asked that Ms. Hill never discussed anything that was out of bounds in terms of the jury or whatever when they were putting this book together. Also, as well, he says that they self-published the book together and that they spent $30,000 of their own money, which sounds like a huge amount of money, just to do a self-published book. And some of that was to have a media attorney go through the manuscript. But before you read that letter, Chris, so her co-author said, he's the one that said that Ms. Hill got in touch with the South Carolina Ethics Commission and to run it by them to see if she's an elected official in South Carolina, if it was permittable that she could write a book. So he said, this Neil Gordon said during at least one media interview, that the commission said as long as no sealed documents or confidential information is shared, that it would be okay to write the book. The commission enforces ethics laws for elected officials. Well, we obtained a copy of this 3-page letter, and it included Ms. Hill's original email to the commission asking them for permission, which is not exactly how Neil Gordon described it.
Okay, do you happen to have the email? I forgot about the email. I have the letter. Do you have the
Yeah,
email by chance?
I
Okay, read the
do.
email.
Okay, so it says this is to the commission. This is to the attorney for the commission, and this is from
Right,
Ms.
the
Hill.
State of South Carolina State Ethics Commission, and It is actually the counsel, Courtney Laster, Laster. Go ahead.
Right. So she says, Good morning, Courtney. I am the clerk of court in Colleton County. I've got a question about the writing of a book by a clerk of court about the process of trial from beginning to end, focusing on the process itself, the history of it, and of course, the high-profile cases that South Carolina has had. What would be the ethic procedures behind this? Close quote. Now,
Okay.
before you read the response, she makes no mention specifically about the Alex Murdaugh double murder case that had just concluded on March 2nd with a guilty verdict. She just refers to, quote, high-profile cases that South Carolina had. And you could almost infer that she was wanting to write a historical book about South Carolina trials. She was vague. She did not come out and ask for permission. May I write about the Alex Murdaugh trial where I was the clerk of court involved in it? And so she wrote this letter April 28th, and this is about 6 weeks after the end of the jury trial.
So, by the way, what email did she use? Did she use her Colleton County government email?
Yes, she did.
Okay, so we have that. We have the response now, and it is a response via electronic mail only, i.e., email, and it's from the State Ethics Commission. And I'm going to read it word for word so that our audience and many others get this verbatim, because they're probably not going to be able to see it, how small it is on this screen here. But so here it is. Informal opinion request. Dear Miss Hill, thank you for your request for an informal opinion from the State Ethics Commission. An informal opinion is the opinion of commission staff taking into consideration any applicable formal opinions, law, and or judicial decisions. Please be advised that an informal opinion is not binding on the commission. Additionally, the commission's jurisdiction is limited to the applicable of the Ethics, Government's Accountability, and Campaign Reform Act of 1991. This opinion is based solely on the facts relayed by you and does not supersede any other statutory or regulatory restrictions or procedures which may apply in this situation. A failure to disclose relevant information may void the opinion. Issue. So now we're going to get into some legalese. So they're going to break it down by legal statutory talk here. Issue. In an email dated April 28, 2023, you submitted the following relevant information. Good morning, Courtney. My name is Rebecca Hill, and I am the clerk of court in Colleton County. I have a question about the writing of a book by a clerk of court about the process of trial from beginning to end, focusing on the process itself, the history of it, and course the high-profile case that South Carolina has had. What would be the ethical procedures behind this? So she's talking about a high-profile case that she wants to write a book about, and she wants a legal opinion about the ethics behind it from the State Ethics Commission. Okay, so now the law is cited. Section 813-700A states in relevant part, no public employee may knowingly use his official employment to obtain an economic interest for himself, a family member, an individual with whom he is associated, or a business with whom they are associated. This prohibition does not extend to the incidental use of public materials, personal or equipment, subject to be available for a public employee's use that does not result in additional public expense. Section 813.720 provides in relevant part. No person may offer to pay a public employee, and no public employee may solicit or receive money in addition to that received by the public employee in his official capacity for advice or assistance given in the course of his employment as a public employee. Section 813.100, subsection 30, defines official capacity as activities which A, arise because of position held by the public official, public member, or public employee. B, involves matters which fall within the official responsibilities of the agency, the public official, the public member, or the public employee. And C, are services the agency would normally provide for and for with the public official, public member, or public employee would be subject to expense reimbursement by the agency with whom the public official, public member, or public employee is associated. These are pretty specific. Section 813.100, subsection 23 defines official responsibility. The direct administrative or operating authority, whether intermediate or final, and whether exercisable, personal, or through subordinates, to approve, disapprove, or otherwise direct government action. 813.725 provides in relevant part. A public employee may not use or disclose confidential information gained in the course of or by reason of his official responsibility in a way that would affect an economic interest held by him, a member of his immediate family, an individual with whom he is associated, or a business with which he is associated. And then B1, a public employee may not willfully examine or aid and abet in the willful examination of a tax return of taxpayers, a workers' compensation record, a record in connection with health or medical treatment, social service records, or other records of an individual in the possession of or within the access of a public department or agency in the purpose of examine an improper or unlawful. Section 813 defines confidential information as information, whether transmitted orally or in writing, which is obtained by reason of the public position or office held and is of such nature that it is not, at the time of transmission, a matter of public record or public knowledge. So now the discussion. Do you have the letter by chance, Karen?
I do.
Read the final discussion for everybody.
Okay. I got it on my phone, so I'm going to read it here.
Okay.
Under Section 813.720 of the Ethics Act, a public employee is prohibited from receiving extra compensation for the performance of duties that she would be expected to undertake in her official capacity. To determine whether the proposed outside employment is permissible, analysis of the term official capacity is required. There is a three-pronged definition of this term in the Ethics Act, and all three of these elements must be present for the outside employment to be considered within a public employee's official capacity. Here you must consider the following questions. 1, does the opportunity for the activity arise as a result of your position as clerk of court? 2, is the subject matter of the work something within your official responsibility? 3, is this type of work something that the clerk of court's office would normally perform and for which you could receive expense reimbursement by the clerk of the court's office? If the answer to all of these questions is yes, then writing the book would be within your official capacity, and it would be impermissible for you to receive compensation for writing the book. That means you can't get any money. You can't take money for writing the book. In the opinion of commission staff, it seems unlikely that writing a book would fall within your official responsibilities as clerk of court. However, you will have to make that ultimate determination based on your official duties and the guidelines offered above. If the answer to any of the above questions is no, then the work is not within your official capacity, and you may receive compensation for authoring the book so long as you adhere to the Commission's guidelines on off-duty employment. In prior advisory opinions, the Commission has advised that a public employee may engage in outside employment so long as no public materials or equipment are used, except incidental use resulting in no cost to the state as allowed by Section 813-700, Section A. 2, such work is engaged in on the employee's own time, if you're doing it off duty in your own time. The work does not interfere with the needs of the agency. And 4, the public position is not utilized to obtain or continue the employment. The letter finishes up, says, finally, please be advised that you're prohibited from using any confidential information as that term is defined in Section 813-100, subsection 7, in furtherance of your own economic interest. If you have questions about whether a particular piece of information is considered confidential under the Ethics Act, please don't hesitate to seek guidance. Thank you for contacting the Commission. Sincerely, Courtney Lester.
Okay, so go ahead. Thoughts?
Nope.
What are your thoughts?
Well, that's a lot of legalese.
That's a lot of legalese.
It basically says they're leaving it up to her to determine if this would fall in the category of something that is normally in her purview for her job, or if it's not. Chris, what's your take on this?
Well, Griffin and Harpootlian now have claimed that she has enriched herself with a book deal at the expense of Murdaugh's right to a fair trial. That's huge. They also claim that Becky made up a social media incident that led to a juror being bounced off. Tell everybody what that social media incident was. Was it the eggs?
Yes, it was, if you remember that. So, all right. So
they're alleging that that was all made up.
They are. They absolutely are. So here's what the defense has shared with us. Okay. So again, we've got one side of this. Apparently, Ms. Hill claimed that while the trial was going on, this was supposedly a Friday evening after the trial had ended, that she supposedly saw on a social media site that the ex-husband of a juror posted that his ex-wife made statements about the trial. Clearly something that is totally illegal that you can't do. So when pressed by Judge Clifton Newman, on the following Monday, on the following Monday, Ms. Hill said she went back to that social media site, couldn't find the post, figured it was deleted. But there was an apology post by the person who wrote this post, which we'll get to in a minute. So Judge Newman ended up excusing that juror from the jury. When the defense went back to look into this, they said, here's their explanation of what they think happened. They said the name of the person who made the post was Timothy Stone. The name of the ex-husband of the juror was Tim Stone. So clearly these were two different people. So the defense alleges that Ms. Hill made up the story so she could have the juror bounced off the the jury because she felt that person will be favorable to Alec and not return a guilty verdict.
So Harpootlian and Griffin are masterfully writing a script in this 65-page affidavit that even include the eggs story during the trial, where everybody went, eggs, okay? And so let's examine this a little bit closer, hon. I mean, they say they have sworn testimony from two jurors, number 630 and number 785. Two other jurors give statements to the defense, apparently, but those are statements as told to the defense. So they are not sworn affidavits. So we have two sworn affidavits, two alleged stories. He said in this press conference the other day, jurors don't want to get involved in this. So here's a question. What if these two jurors had motivation for signing a sworn statement? That's going to be a question that at some point is going to have to be answered, i.e., is there a lot of pressure taking place here now that Alex Murdaugh has been convicted? What if the defense had to, say something to them or do something for them? Because just recently, Jim Griffin was reprimanded by the South Carolina prison system, and remind our audience for what that was all about real fast, Karen.
So Jim Griffin recorded a private phone call between him and Alex Murdaugh, which they are allowed to have under attorney-client privilege. And Alec was reading his journal entries from behind bars into the phone. Jim Griffin recorded it and gave it to the media, gave it to Fox Nation for their documentary. And then they got busted. And the South Carolina prison system sent Jim Griffin a letter saying, if you do this again, you could lose your privilege of speaking privately with your client, Alec. So he got busted for doing that. I've always believed, in my opinion, that Alec may have gotten money for that media interview. We don't know for certain. They haven't come out and said, but it's interesting. What's your take on that, Chris?
Well, I think what's good for the goose is good for the gander, right? I mean, you've got the defense out there behind the scenes, doing these secret interviews for national media. And by the way, some of the facts in that is Alex was utilizing another inmate's, communication tablet to communicate with Jim. He recorded the whole thing and then passed it off to Fox Nation. Okay? And now we have this situation where we have a clerk who writes a letter to the Ethics Commission and says, hey, can I write a book? And if so, what are the rules? They find out about it, almost immediately cry foul and file a 65-page motion, which in my opinion is also written by Alex Murdaugh, because he knows who this clerk is, because he practiced law for so many years in that courthouse. I'm going to put dimes to donuts. In my opinion, there's some bad blood going on here, and it just keeps getting. I don't know. I'm going to put a seatbelt on this one, because that courthouse in South Carolina is, I think Judge Newman, I think the prosecution, SLED, those guys got it together. But this situation now could be a curveball for the Alex Murdaugh trial. We're going to have to let the attorneys weigh in on all that stuff, but it certainly doesn't smell right. It's not passing the smell test today anyway, with either the letter or with the 65-page affidavit that is saying what it's saying. What do you think, Karen?
Well, I want to know what you all think. So do you guys think that these allegations against the clerk of the court could be true? Do you think that Alex Murdaugh could get a new trial, a second trial? Leave your comments for us below. We want to see and hear them.
Aloha, everybody. Have a good night. Karen and I will see you on the next one.
Hard working every day, I'm stressed out 24/7, babe. No timeouts, wish we could fly away. You and I go to our favorite place. Oh yeah, make special memories together. I'll be your company now and forever. I say we fly away. You and me go to our need a summer breeze, some fresh air to put my mind at ease. No cares. You wanna come with me? Me and you go to our favorite tree. Are you ready now? We jump on a plane now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. Don't hesitate now. We're taking away. Yeah, we're taking away. We'll never come down. We're going away. Yeah, we're going away. You and me. Feeling the sun on my face in a way.